air travel. Despite severe winters in this part of the country, most major American airports send planes off into snowstorms. It's snowing when Tom and Connie Merrill arrive at New York's LaGuardia Airport, heading home from celebrating Tom's 40th birthday. Their flight to Cleveland is still scheduled despite the weather.
It was a very snowy day that day, and the weather was really starting to blow in pretty heavy at that time. There were a lot of people in the airport saying that the airport should be closed.
And I really didn't enjoy flying a lot. I was like a white-knuckle flyer.
As the storm worsens, the Merrills wish they had stayed in their hotel.
The wind was approximately 30-mile-an-hour gusts. The snow was a wet type, heavy snow.
The airport has put on extra crews to clear off potentially deadly ice that is quickly forming on the aircraft. Tom is a novice pilot. He knows that on days like this, even the vapor in a cloud can cover an aircraft with dangerous atmospheric ice.
With what flight training I've had, I know that moisture on wings is a zero tolerance, it's called. You're not allowed any moisture on a wing.
Dan Ciccio is an airline pilot and accident investigator for LaGuardia Airport. He's well aware of the negative effects that weather can have on an airplane.
All kinds of weather present unique problems to the airline pilot. We have precipitation and we have a cold surface. The precipitation can then freeze on the surface.
Any buildup of ice can change the shape of the wing, decreasing the amount of lift it can provide, at the same time adding to the weight of the aircraft. Ciccio demonstrates the effect in flight simulation.
Essentially, it changes the whole design of the airplane, and the flight characteristics are unpredictable. So that if this occurs, really the flight crew does not know how that airplane is going to respond.
Ice in the engines is what sent Air Florida Flight 90 crashing into Washington, D.C.'s Potomac River in January of 1982. Ice also altered the instruments that could have detected the problem. Only 5 people survived the crash. The Merrill's plane has now been sitting in the cold at the gate for an hour. Finally, they get the call to board.
USAir Flight 405 is now ready to board.
There were, I believe, 12 or 14 planes in front of us for takeoff.
It was just unbelievable that anybody was taking off in this weather and that the airport was open.
Crews immediately set to work to de-ice the plane according to regulation. But the de-icing truck breaks down behind the aircraft.
So we sat on the runway for about 35 to 40 minutes prior to takeoff.
You really wondered, are we really going to take off in this weather?
Darkness falls at the airport. The Merrill's plane is still at the gate. Tom grows concerned about the time that has elapsed since the plane was de-iced. He calls a flight attendant.
I had noticed early on snow accumulating on the right wing of the aircraft. I said, ma'am, there's snow on the wing. Could you have the pilot look at it?
The co-pilot checks his instrumentation, but finds no indication of ice. As the engines start up, Tom wishes he could leave.
At that particular time, it would have been a penalty to get off that aircraft. It was a federal offense.
405 control, take off.
When the pilot said they were going to be taking off now, I grabbed Tom's hand and started saying my prayers.
As the plane begins to lift off the runway, the cabin starts to shake violently.
This was not normal.
The pilot struggles to control the plane, but it suddenly goes into a stall.
And I looked at Connie. Did we say goodbye to each other?
When he looked over and said goodbye, I think he said it very loud because it's something that I remember in my mind.
The plane drops 160 feet to the ground.
And I remember hearing such profound noises of crunching crunching and scraping of the ground and just so much noise.
Then it slams into the water at the end of the runway.
I remember pitch black and just soaking wet, and the smell of jet fuel was unbelievable.
Connie drags her injured husband from the sinking plane and helps him swim to shore. She watches, shivering, as rescue trucks race down the runway to the crash site. Help finally arrives. 24 passengers have made it to shore, but 27 others don't survive.
This happened so fast and the plane sank so fast that the only people that survived saved themselves.
The Merrills tell crash investigators about seeing ice on the wings. 2 weeks later, the Federal Aviation Administration proposes sweeping new safety rules for flying in icy weather. And the FAA was joined by NASA scientists to crack the dangers of atmospheric ice. Wind tunnels test new technology like electro-explosive de-icing, where a shock wave travels down the skin of a wing to shatter accumulated ice. Commercial aviation companies now subject their jet engines to wind and supercooled water droplets. This tests what their performance will be in ice-producing clouds. Here, a prototype temporary hangar lined with infrared lights flash melts ice on an aircraft. But pilots say the most critical advances needed are in forecasting the kinds of weather that ice planes.
The decision that the flight crew makes is only as good as the information that they're presented. The reason that these accidents happen is failures of our system. I think that we all try our very best in the industry, but we cannot beat Mother Nature totally.
And beating Mother Nature is a risk that Connie Merrill says she'll never take again by traveling in dangerous weather.